She was a successful financial analyst
She's brilliant as far as I'm concerned.
who fell in love with a New York City attorney.
They seem like a lovely couple.
From a distance, Angela Bledsoe and James Ray seemed like the perfect match.
Living the high life, going to country clubs.
But behind the scenes, the relationship was stormy. Were you worried that he might hurt her?
Yes.
And the biggest storm of all
You never, ever would believe something like this would happen right next door to you.
would soon be felt.
Suspect is on the run following a murder in Montclair.
But was it murder
It was just like cold-blooded.
or self-defense?
James Ray had a right to protect himself.
Ultimately, this is a story about jealousy and obsession, which turned deadly.
Success, ambition, and a picture-perfect life can sometimes mask the most dangerous secrets. Today, we examine a case where achieving the American dream became a nightmare that ended in betrayal, violence, and an international manhunt.
I remember exactly that day. He said, Angela is dead. Oh, boy. I think I yelled out and nothing came out. Someone asked me about forgiveness, and I informed them forgiveness is something that takes time. And I am not at that point of forgiving at this point in time.
In the world of high finance, few stories begin as promisingly as Angela Michelle Bledsoe's. Born in Maryland in 1974, she embodied determination from an early age. Her parents, Ray and Gail, raised 4 children in a middle-class household where Sunday church attendance was non-negotiable and academic excellence was expected. Angela distinguished herself as more than just another honor student. While her classmates focused on grades alone, she participated in student government and demonstrated leadership qualities that would serve her throughout her career. Her teachers remember her as soft-spoken yet confident, someone who chose her words carefully but spoke with conviction when necessary. Florida A&M University became the launching pad for Angela's professional aspirations. Majoring in business, she immersed herself in campus organizations and joined Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Her fellow students recall someone driven not just by personal success, but by a genuine desire to create opportunities for other African American women in industries where representation remained limited. Upon graduation, Angela's potential was recognized immediately. Multiple financial institutions courted her with job offers, 11 in total. She chose to enter the competitive world of financial planning, where her analytical mind and interpersonal skills quickly set her apart from her peers. By age 27, Angela had achieved what many consider impossible in New York's expensive real estate market. She purchased her own brownstone in Brooklyn. This wasn't just a home, it was a statement. Here was a young African-American woman who had climbed the corporate ladder through merit alone, establishing herself as a force in Manhattan's financial district. Her success extended beyond personal achievement. Angela remained connected to her alma mater and her sorority, mentoring younger women and contributing to scholarship funds. She understood that her accomplishments carried responsibility to pave pathways for others who shared her background and ambitions, but success in one's professional life doesn't guarantee happiness in personal relationships. Despite her achievements, Angela yearned for partnership with someone who could match her drive and complement her goals. The intersection of Angela's personal and professional life came through what seemed like a perfect match. While working as a financial advisor, Bledsoe met James R. Ray, 3, when he hired her to work at his insurance brokerage firm. James presented an impressive resume that appeared to complement Angela's own achievements perfectly. 11 years Angela's senior, James had built his credentials through diverse experiences. His background included military service as a Marine, followed by a career in law enforcement with the NYPD. After leaving police work, he had earned both MBA and law degrees, eventually establishing a successful insurance brokerage in New Jersey. From external appearances, James embodied the type of partner Angela had envisioned. Here was a man who understood professional pressure, who had built his own business empire, and who seemed to share her appreciation for hard work and strategic thinking. The initial stages of their relationship reinforced this impression. colleagues who observed them together described a couple that seemed genuinely compatible. James appeared captivated by Angela's intelligence and success, while she appreciated his established position and apparent stability. However, beneath this promising surface lay a complication that would fundamentally alter the relationship's trajectory. James had failed to disclose a crucial detail. He was married and had been for nearly 2 decades. His wife and 2 adult children lived with him in their Montclair, New Jersey residence. When Angela discovered this deception, her reaction was exactly what those who knew her would expect. She felt betrayed and angry. Friends and family members who later learned of this situation emphasized that intentionally pursuing a married man was completely contrary to Angela's character and values. The revelation created a crossroads moment. Angela's support system encouraged her to end the relationship immediately, viewing James's dishonesty as a fundamental breach of trust that predicted future problems. But relationships, especially those involving strong emotions and professional connections, rarely follow logical advice. Despite her initial anger and the concerns of her loved ones, Angela made a decision that surprised many who knew her well. She chose to continue the relationship with James. This choice would set in motion a series of events that would gradually erode the foundation of her carefully constructed life. Angela's decision to remain with James despite his marital status created immediate tension within her support network. Family members and close friends struggled to understand how someone known for her strong moral compass could compromise on such a fundamental issue. The relationship's unusual structure created inherent instability. James continued living with his wife in New Jersey while maintaining his relationship with Angela in Brooklyn. This arrangement left Angela functioning essentially as a single woman, despite being involved in a committed relationship. In 2012, the relationship's complexity increased significantly when Angela became pregnant. Despite the circumstances, she embraced the prospect of motherhood with characteristic determination and joy. Her daughter Alana represented a new chapter, and Angela threw herself into preparing for this role with the same dedication she had applied to her career. Alana's birth brought both fulfillment and additional challenges. Angela found herself managing the demands of single parenthood, while James remained physically and emotionally distant, dividing his time between 2 households and 2 sets of responsibilities. For 3 years, this arrangement continued, with Angela bearing the primary responsibility for their daughter's care. James's involvement remained limited and unpredictable, creating frustration and resentment that began to overshadow the relationship's positive aspects. In 2015, a significant shift occurred when James and his wife officially separated. His wife moved out of their Montclair home, creating an opportunity that James extended to Angela and Alana. They could move in with him and finally live as a conventional family unit. Angela viewed this invitation as a potential solution to their relationship's structural problems. Moving to New Jersey represented a chance for them to function as true partners in raising their daughter, rather than maintaining their complicated bicoastal arrangement. The move initially produced positive changes. James became more involved in Alana's daily life, taking her golfing regularly and participating in routine parenting responsibilities. Father and daughter developed a genuine bond that had been impossible under their previous arrangement. However, the closer quarters also revealed fundamental incompatibilities between Angela and James that had been masked by their physical separation. Living together exposed different communication styles, conflicting approaches to conflict resolution, and underlying power dynamics that created new sources of tension. What had appeared from the outside to be an ideal partnership? 2 successful professionals sharing a beautiful home in an affluent neighborhood, concealed an increasingly troubled relationship that was deteriorating behind closed doors. As Angela and James settled into their shared life in Montclair, troubling patterns began emerging that would escalate over time. Those closest to Angela noticed changes in her demeanor and behavior that suggested something was wrong beneath the surface of their apparently successful relationship. James's approach to their partnership revealed controlling tendencies that became more pronounced as time passed. Angela confided in friends about his constant questioning of her activities, whereabouts, and decisions. Simple choices about her schedule or social interactions became subjects of interrogation that left her feeling monitored and constrained. The verbal interactions between them grew increasingly hostile. Angela described to her support network how James would belittle her accomplishments, question her judgment, and undermine her confidence through persistent criticism. These confrontations often occurred in front of their young daughter, creating an environment of tension that affected the entire household. Technology became another avenue for James's monitoring behavior. Angela suspected that he was using surveillance methods to track her communications and movements, though she struggled to prove these suspicions definitively. The constant feeling of being watched added to her stress and sense of isolation. Religious manipulation emerged as another troubling element. James would send Angela biblical passages and verses, particularly those addressing traditional gender roles and spousal obedience. For someone of Angela's intelligence and independence, these messages represented not spiritual guidance, but attempts at psychological control. Angela's family members observed these changes with growing alarm. The confident, self-assured woman they had always known seemed diminished, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering James's volatile reactions. However, their attempts to address these concerns directly with Angela often met with defensive responses, as she struggled between acknowledging the problems and maintaining her relationship. The most disturbing incidents involved direct intimidation. Angela reported waking up to find James sitting on the edge of their bed, simply staring at her in silence. These moments of psychological menace left her feeling unsafe in her own home. By 2018, the accumulation of these behaviors had fundamentally altered Angela's perspective on their relationship. The successful partnership she had hoped to build had devolved into something that resembled emotional imprisonment rather than love. Friends and family members began urging Angela more forcefully to consider leaving the relationship. Their concerns had evolved from mild worry to genuine fear for her safety and well-being. The fall of 2018 marked a turning point in Angela's thinking about her future. After years of hoping that James would change his controlling behavior, she finally accepted that their relationship had become irreparably toxic and potentially dangerous. Angela began taking concrete steps toward independence, though she approached this process carefully and strategically. Her primary concern involved ensuring that any separation would minimize trauma for their 6-year-old daughter, who had grown close to her father during their time living together in Montclair. One aspect of Angela's planning involved reconnecting with her past. During a homecoming visit to Florida A&M University, she encountered Bukhari Burns, a former classmate with whom she had maintained a platonic friendship during their college years. Their reunion sparked a romantic connection that provided Angela with emotional support during a particularly difficult period. This new relationship represented more than simple companionship. It offered Angela a glimpse of what healthy partnership could look like. However, she kept this connection extremely private, sharing details with virtually no one in her immediate circle. Angela's discretion regarding this relationship reflected both her natural privacy and her growing awareness of James's volatile temperament. She had witnessed his explosive reactions to situations that threatened his control, and she understood that discovering her involvement with another man could trigger dangerous consequences. Bledsoe was killed shortly before her 11:30 a.m. meeting with a Montclair real estate agent about a house she was looking to buy on Clover Hill Place. This appointment represented Angela's concrete steps toward establishing an independent living situation for herself and her daughter. Her planning faced significant legal obstacles. New Jersey custody laws prevented her from relocating to Florida with Alana without James's consent he was unlikely to provide. This legal reality meant that any separation would require careful negotiation to protect both her own interests and her daughter's well-being. Despite these complications, Angela had reached a point of no return in her thinking. She had decided that continuing to live with James posed greater risks than the challenges of establishing independence. Unfortunately, Angela's careful discretion wasn't perfect. James's suspicious nature and monitoring behavior eventually led him to discover evidence of her relationship with Bukhari. Text messages between them provided the proof he needed to confirm his suspicions about Angela's emotional distance. The discovery triggered exactly the type of explosive reaction Angela had feared. James confronted Bukhari directly, making threatening phone calls that left both men aware that the situation had escalated beyond simple relationship problems into potentially dangerous territory. October 22, 2018, began as what appeared to be a routine Monday morning in the Montclair household. Angela had dropped their daughter at school and returned home, likely preparing for her upcoming real estate appointment that would represent another step toward independence. What transpired next would be reconstructed later through forensic evidence and James's own subsequent admissions. On October 22, 2018, Ray, now 60, shot Angela Bledsoe, 44, in the chest, face, and back, said Assistant Prosecutor Michelle Miller, who tried the case along with Assistant Prosecutor John Patillo. Ray shot Bledsoe shortly after she returned home after dropping their daughter off at school. The confrontation between Angela and James that morning appears to have centered on her decision to leave the relationship permanently. Rather than accepting her choice, James responded with violence that escalated rapidly to lethal force. The crime scene would later reveal details that contradicted James's subsequent claims of self-defense. Angela's injuries indicated that she had been shot multiple times, with wounds suggesting she had attempted to escape or defend herself before succumbing to her injuries. After the shooting, James's behavior demonstrated calculated planning rather than the panic typically associated with defensive actions. He spent several hours in the house with Angela's body, making preparations for his departure rather than summoning emergency services. During this time, James printed his last will and testament, arranged for temporary childcare, and planned his escape route. These actions suggested premeditation and awareness that his actions would have serious consequences. At 4:30 p.m., James left the house to collect their daughter from school, maintaining a facade of normalcy despite having committed murder hours earlier. His ability to interact with educational staff and his daughter without arousing suspicion demonstrated a disturbing capacity for compartmentalization. That evening, James arranged to meet his brother Robert at a local restaurant, ostensibly for a family gathering. However, his behavior immediately struck Robert as unusual. James wore sunglasses despite the evening hour and appeared nervous and distracted throughout the encounter. During this meeting, James made an unusual request. He asked Robert to care for Alana for the next 24 hours. This arrangement allowed James to transfer his daughter's custody without explanation, effectively removing her from his immediate responsibility. Before leaving the restaurant, James posed for what he knew would likely be a final photograph with his daughter. This moment, captured on Robert's phone, would later serve as evidence of James's awareness that he was about to disappear permanently from her life. James then excused himself, ostensibly to use the restroom, but instead left the building and drove away, beginning a flight from justice that would span multiple countries. James's brother Robert found himself thrust into an impossible situation when he discovered the true nature of the events that had unfolded. After taking Alana home and preparing her for bed, Robert made a shocking discovery while unpacking her suitcase. Hidden among the child's belongings was a letter written by James, a confession that detailed his actions earlier that day. The letter revealed that Angela was dead, killed by James's own hand, and that her body remained in their Montclair home. Robert's immediate response demonstrated the moral clarity that his brother lacked. Despite family loyalties and the complexity of the situation, he contacted law enforcement immediately, understanding that Angela's family deserved answers and that justice needed to be served. When Montclair police arrived at the Ray residence, they found exactly what the confession letter had described. Angela's body was discovered inside the home, with evidence indicating she had been the victim of multiple gunshot wounds. The crime scene investigation revealed details that would later prove crucial to understanding the true nature of Angela's death. Forensic evidence suggested that the scene had been manipulated, with items positioned in ways that didn't align with James's claimed narrative of self-defense. Meanwhile, James had embarked on a carefully planned escape route that demonstrated significant premeditation. Law enforcement agencies quickly determined that he had abandoned his vehicle at Newark Airport before continuing his flight through alternative means. Rather than boarding a commercial flight, James had taken a taxi to Philadelphia and then continued south through hitchhiking and other transportation methods. His route suggested someone who had researched how to avoid detection while crossing state and eventually national borders. The investigation revealed that James had managed to reach Mexico and from there had traveled to Cuba, selecting a destination that he believed would provide sanctuary from U.S. law enforcement efforts. However, James's understanding of international law and extradition agreements proved flawed. Cuban authorities, cooperating with U.S. officials, located and detained him shortly after his arrival in Havana. The international cooperation that led to James's capture demonstrated the seriousness with which authorities treated Angela's murder. This was not simply a domestic dispute that had escalated, but a calculated homicide followed by sophisticated escape planning. James's apprehension in Cuba ended his brief period as a fugitive, but began a legal process that would ultimately determine whether his claims of self-defense had any merit under scrutiny. His return to the United States marked the beginning of a complex judicial process that would examine not only the events of October 22nd, but also the relationship dynamics that had led to such a tragic conclusion. The legal proceedings that followed James Ray's capture would test his self-defense claims against forensic evidence and witness testimony. Prosecutors faced the challenge of reconstructing events that had no independent witnesses, relying primarily on physical evidence and James's own contradictory statements. James Ray III, now 60 years old, looked at the jury as his lawyer argued he shot 44-year-old Angela Bledsoe in self-defense, not cold blood. Angela Bledsoe, on October 22, 2018, picked up a 9mm and pointed it at James Ray. Period. Defense attorney Brooke Barnett said, "The defense strategy centered on portraying Angela as the aggressor in their final confrontation, claiming she had threatened James with a weapon, forcing him to defend himself. This narrative required jurors to believe that Angela, despite planning to leave the relationship, had chosen instead to initiate deadly violence." Prosecutors presented a fundamentally different interpretation of the evidence. They argued that the crime scene had been deliberately manipulated to support James's self-defense claim, with physical evidence contradicting his version of events. Forensic experts testified about blood spatter patterns, bullet trajectories, and weapon positioning that suggested Angela had been shot while attempting to escape rather than while threatening James. The prosecution's reconstruction painted a picture of a calculated execution rather than defensive action. Robert Ray's testimony proved particularly compelling for the prosecution. His reluctant participation in the trial demonstrated that family loyalty hadn't prevented him from cooperating with justice. He described his brother's suspicious behavior at the restaurant and the discovery of the confession letter. The prosecution also highlighted James's behavior following the shooting. His failure to summon emergency services, his elaborate escape planning, and his international flight suggested consciousness of guilt rather than the actions of someone who had defended himself legitimately. Character testimony revealed the controlling dynamics of James and Angela's relationship, providing context for understanding the events of October 22. Witnesses described James's possessive behavior and Angela's growing desire to establish independence. The defense attempted to characterize Angela negatively, focusing on her extramarital relationship as evidence of her willingness to engage in deceptive behavior. However, this strategy risked alienating jurors who might view such tactics as inappropriate victim blaming. An Essex County jury has found a Montclair attorney guilty of killing his girlfriend in 2018. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours before coming back with a guilty verdict in the trial of James Ray. The relatively brief deliberation period suggested that jurors found the prosecution's case convincing and James's self-defense claims unconvincing when measured against the physical evidence and witness testimony. The guilty verdict represented a measure of justice for Angela's family and friends, who had endured years of uncertainty while waiting for resolution of the case. James Ray's conviction for first-degree murder should have marked the conclusion of Angela Bledsoe's case, providing her family with closure and ensuring that justice was served through appropriate sentencing. However, the case would take one final, unexpected turn that denied everyone involved the satisfaction of seeing accountability fully realized. In May, Ray was convicted in the shooting death of Angela Bledsoe in their Montclair home in 2018. The conviction carried the possibility of a life sentence, reflecting the seriousness of his crimes and the calculated nature of his actions following the murder. As Angela's family prepared for the sentencing hearing, they looked forward to making victim impact statements and witnessing James receive appropriate punishment for his actions. The sentencing would provide an opportunity for Angela's loved ones to speak directly about the impact of their loss. However, 4 days before the scheduled sentencing, James was discovered unconscious in his jail cell at Essex County Jail. Despite emergency medical intervention, he was pronounced dead at University Hospital, bringing an abrupt end to the legal proceedings. The circumstances of James's death were never fully clarified through official channels. While the timing strongly suggested suicide, no definitive cause of death was released to the public, leaving Angela's family with additional questions and unresolved feelings. For Angela's loved ones, James's death represented the ultimate act of control and manipulation. Even in facing the consequences of his actions, he had found a way to avoid full accountability and deny them the closure that formal sentencing might have provided. The timing was particularly cruel as it occurred on Father's Day, ensuring that this holiday would forever be associated with his final act of selfishness. Angela's family interpreted this timing as one last attempt to inflict emotional pain on those who had loved her. James's death meant that he would never serve time for Angela's murder, never face the daily reality of imprisonment as consequence for his actions, and never provide additional answers about his motivations or planning. Despite the legal system's failure to deliver complete justice, Angela's family and friends have worked to ensure that her memory transcends the circumstances of her death. They have established scholarships in her name and continue to honor her contributions to her community and profession. The case serves as a reminder that justice can take many forms, and that the legal system's limitations don't diminish the importance of remembering victims for their lives rather than their deaths. Angela Bledsoe's story continues through the lives she touched, the opportunities she created for others, and the daughter she loved so deeply.